The symbols up here behind me are familiar ones. And it's their familiarity, their ubiquity, that makes them so successful. They communicate their message in a language that's universal, that transcends cultural variables like geography and vernacular. These symbols are part of a global visual vocabulary. And the collective recognition that they activate connects us, just like any shared language would. But these icons are more than just visual forms. They represent ideas, beliefs, mythologies, systems. They evoke things that are large, complex, and expansive, but in a way that's immediate, personal, accessible. These symbols give us the opportunity to both connect with the stories and the ideas that they represent, but also to communicate our alignment with them. They enable us to integrate these ideas into our own identities, into our own beliefs. They allow us to tell our own stories. This power, this ability to communicate and connect, it's one of the things that makes visual design so powerful. Our firm realizes that this ability can be a tool for transformation. We understand that design can be used to create meaning and tension and ultimately action. The projects and partnerships that our studio engages in, they're centered around work in service of building community, promoting social change, advancing culture. There are so many examples throughout history of people who've recognized the power of graphic expression to create transformation by inspiring action, by starting movements, by saving lives. And it's these examples that motivated us to start our own practice, where we put design in service of creating social change.
So by immersing ourselves into history, we've started to recognize patterns in history, and we created a solution to express ideas and connections through this little formula that I'm about to show. So design creates perception, and our main objective when creating an identity is to communicate the essence of its subject, its narrative, its intentions, and create solutions that connect to the audience. An identity can communicate these values, and then people can connect to those. How do they connect? Well, they connect through shared beliefs, the values of a brand or an organization, and those connections essentially start to create a community. And the more and more connections, the stronger the community is, and the bigger the community is. And then that community can create a collective action. That action starts to create rituals and visual communication and just participation. And the more and more that it starts to spin, the more and more this cycle happens, the stronger this identity gets, the stronger the community gets, and the stronger the action becomes. So let's take a look at some examples in history that do just this. There are countless examples, but we're only going to focus on 3 today. By the end of the 50s, the world had seen devastation of war, from 2 atomic bombs that were deployed in World War II to the devastation in Vietnam. And in London, in 1957, Britain became the 3rd atomic power. And this beautiful people here is a group of anti-war activists that founded the campaign of nuclear disarmament. What they did when they founded it, the first thing they did was engage designer Gerald Holtom to design a symbol for their public demonstrations. Holtom used semaphoric signals, a system of communication using flags so you can see it at a distance. And he used the letter N and the letter D, and by combining those, he created a logo for the campaign of nuclear disarmament. It's probably a bit familiar. That logo was immediately adopted by the organization and became an effective tool for spreading their anti-war message. So effective, in fact, that the symbol was soon adopted by other anti-war activists and eventually became an iconic symbol for the global anti-war movement. During the Vietnam War specifically, the peace symbol became a tool for disapproval. It was a visual way to communicate the opposition. The collective opposition was a key factor in bringing the Vietnam War to an end. And obviously, the peace sign has been used since then and continues to be used. One recent example is Jean Julien's Peace for Paris in response to the 2015 terrorist attacks in Paris. Some of you might remember seeing that on social media avatars and in your feeds. So again, we have this identity that creates a connection, a personal connection, and then that individual connection starts to create community and then spur collective action. And again, the more and more it grows, the stronger it gets. Let's look at another example. The civil rights movement came to national prominence in the late 50s. But as long as we've been a nation, Black Americans have had to fight for each and every one of their rights. Racial inequity is rampant in our society, and police shootings of unarmed Black Americans are horrifyingly frequent, and the majority go unpunished. Symbol of the raised fist is a symbol of solidarity and support. It's also used as a salute to express unity, strength, and resistance. It was first used in 1917 as a symbol of the industrial workers of the world, but it started to become more popular during the Spanish Civil War, and it was a symbol of anti-fascism. In the 1968 Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos, who won the medals, raised their fist during the national anthem. And unfortunately, they were disqualified. Sound familiar? The symbol of a raised fist is a symbol that has been used as a Black Power symbol and by the Black Panthers. The Black Panther Party was established in the late 50s and early 60s with the goal of helping to protect its citizens and residents. It established patrols in Black communities to monitor police activities and protect residents from police brutality. They developed social services, free breakfast programs, and they helped the homeless. The raised fist became the Panther salute, and it was used in marches, throughout the media whenever they were on camera, and it was used in print for their Black Panther newspaper. The Black Panther newspaper was the art direction was led by Emory Douglas, who is the Minister of Culture for the Black Panthers. And this paper, during the 70s, had a circulation of 140,000 papers a week throughout the world. And inside of it, there was many opportunities to pull out posters and hang those posters up and really show this solidarity, this community that they created. The gesture of the raised fist has evolved and spread through many channels throughout time. And today, it's more relevant than ever with Black Lives Matter and the current culture we're in. Again, we have a symbol, the identity, the connectedness to that identity, and that collective action. And it gets stronger and stronger every time it's used.
And one more example. By the end of 1985, 15,000 people had contracted AIDS. Nearly half of them lost their lives. A third of this population, which were typically young and otherwise healthy gay men, were living in New York City at the time. US President Ronald Reagan didn't even utter the word AIDS until the end of September 1985 while talking to a journalist. There was so much confusion, so much fear around those who had the disease. People were ostracizing their own family members. Hospitals were treating victims like biohazards. Funeral homes wouldn't even bury the dead. Frustrated, desperate, and scared, a group of gay men in New York City decided to come together and strategize ways to increase awareness, understanding, and action around the epidemic. Their lovers and friends were dying, their government was not responding, and the public at large wouldn't even address the issue. They decided to use the language of design, particularly advertising. They recognized that bold messaging and graphic symbology could really connect and raise awareness within the public. They sought to create a graphic message in the form of a symbol, a beacon that could unite the gay community, but also resonate within a larger audience. While they were engaging in this process, they also realized that up till this point, the gay community had never had a symbol that represented them. They never had a logo that spoke to their experience. They realized the solution they came up with would have to authentically speak to this experience. But how do you communicate the fact that people were losing their lives in such great numbers? How do you connect the apathy that was perpetuating this epidemic to a history of persecution and discrimination? And how do you convey to a public refusing to take notice that by not acknowledging the issue of AIDS and not helping their fellow citizens, they were complicit in the suffering of thousands? After weighing many different options, they landed on this: a pink triangle. The pink triangle had been used in Nazi concentration camps to identify homosexuals. And in the context of fear around the segregation, the quarantine, the internment of people with HIV, using this symbol was a double-edged sword. It connected to that history of injustice. They changed the color to a vivid fuchsia, Pantone 212 to be exact. And they also turned the symbol upside down. So the visual form was that of a solid base that terminated into an apex, like a pyramid. They paired this dynamic symbol with an equally dynamic message. Silence equals death. The most succinct explanation possible to convey the message that by doing nothing, you are actively perpetuating the crisis of AIDS. Overnight, they blanketed the city with their work. They wheat pasted these posters all over the East Village, the West Village, Chelsea, the Upper West Side. Their work infiltrated the visual landscape of New York City. It was their goal to reach communities that included gay men, lesbians, and members of the media, the places where they worked and they lived. Now, if you've ever attended a gay pride parade or a gay pride march, you've probably encountered this campaign. You've probably seen the pink triangle on a black background with the words "silence equals death" below it in white letters. These components have become integrated within the consciousness of the gay community. The pink triangle has become a symbol of gay identity and gay empowerment. It has definitely endured over time. In the wake of the 2016 massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, images of silence equals death and appropriated versions of it flooded social media, testament to the timelessness and lasting legacy of this visual message. Once again, we have an identity that people can connect to. They can integrate it into their own identity, into their personal lives. And as more and more people do this, we have a collective, we have a community. So now that you've seen some examples of what's been our inspiration, we want to show you some of the work that it's actually inspired. When we first started working with Shout Your Abortion, when we first started working with this organization, they were a group of small activists making a huge impact. Specifically, they were focused on using personal narrative to erase the stigma around abortion. It was our aim to create a visual identity that matched the huge impact of what they did. So we created a design that connected them to the long history of activism in this area. This history that they were an extension of, that they were a part of, that they were actively participating in. We created a digital experience that acted as a platform where people could share their stories, could share their narratives. To date, over 1 million people have hashtagged Shout Your Abortion. They've done events in all 50 states and beyond. And currently, the work that they're doing is more important than ever before. Another one of our clients. When the members of Join first approached us, their mission was simple: to create an identity that communicated the ideas of community and connection that was at the heart of their organization. So Join is a US-based collective of product designers focused on promoting domestic production, community engagement, and the fostering of young, emerging designers. So for their identity, we created a solution that centers on the idea of connection, which is central in the Join mission, and it really runs through most everything that they do. Part retail space, part workshop, part creative consultancy, the Join organization is making a huge impact within the US design scene and beyond.
And as you've seen, the sneak peek, the last example we're going to talk about is a personal project of ours that we started back in 2013. We had an idea to connect the Seattle design community and stimulate conversation and inspire our peers and our community by inviting our personal design heroes to share their knowledge. We partnered with the Seattle Public Library that was gracious enough to give us free space. And we set up a not-for-profit to make sure that the events stay free. We fund it by sponsorships and partners, and it's now in its 4th season. And to date, we've had over 5,000 attendees. The next event's next Friday in Seattle. It's Eddie Opara from Pentagram. And our first lecture ever was the fabulous April Greiman, who'll be speaking here today. The promotional materials that we were never paid for to do was a labor of love, has become a signifier in the Seattle design community. These are the posters, our podium, website, tote bags. Really known for the tote bags. They're very large and have all the sponsors' goodies in there to help sustain it. But all of this work, even though it was a labor of love, has really helped us to grow as a studio. As mentioned earlier, these posters are in the permanent collection at SF MoMA and the Milton Glaser Archives, and now at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Archive. And it's really created this great connection with our community, and we bring in champion voices like Emory Douglas, the Minister of Culture for the Black Panthers. So as we've seen today, graphic design has the power to connect individuals, shift perspectives, and also create meaningful change. To quote one of our favorite designers, Milton Glaser, the designer's role is a role of good citizenship. That is the commitment that our team makes every day. And to us, good citizenship means fighting tyranny, listening to and raising marginalized voices, and building a sustainable world. We really hope that you take some of these ideals and start to put them into your own practice. Try them out. Feels good. Oh. Thank you.